Liana had not seen another human being for 15 years. The forest had become her home, her protector, and, at times, her prison. Towering trees with thick, twisting branches formed a canopy that filtered the sunlight into soft, golden streaks. Moss carpeted the ground, and the air smelled of damp earth and wildflowers. Birds and small woodland creatures were her only companions. She had learned their songs, their habits, their ways. And in return, they had taught her the secrets of surviving in a world that had once rejected her. She had come to this place as a frightened child. Her family had been destroyed in a single night of fire and blood, leaving her alone and cursed, or so the whispers said. Some spoke of an ancient magic, a darkness that lingered in her bloodline, and those who survived her family's fall feared her. So, she had fled, running farther than anyone could imagine, deeper than the hunters of her past could follow. The years had shaped her into someone fierce and self-reliant. She could move silently through the forest, her eyes sharp and aware. She could hunt, fish, and forage. And her small cabin built from fallen trees, and clay was hidden by thick vines and brambles. Life was hard, but it was hers. She had her freedom, and she clung to it with a stubbornness that sometimes surprised even herself. Yet, despite her independence, there were nights when loneliness pressed against her chest like the heavy branches above. Nights when memories returned with vivid clarity. The laughter of her siblings, the warmth of her mother's hand, the sound of her father's voice, calling her name before the fire swallowed everything. These were the nights when she wept quietly, her tears falling onto the cold, hard earth, and she whispered to the wind, wishing for comfort that never came. One night, the forest felt different. The air was heavy, and a low mist rolled across the ground. Liana had been collecting herbs near a small stream when she heard it, a rustle, a snap of a branch, soft at first, then louder. She froze, heart hammering in her chest. Her senses, honed over 15 years, screamed that she was not alone. "Show yourself," she called, her voice steady but cautious. No answer came, only the rustle of leaves and the quiet trickle of the stream. She took a step back, hand gripping the small knife at her waist. Shadows moved between the trees, but when she squinted, she saw nothing. Suddenly, a monstrous shape emerged, a wolf, larger than any she had seen before. Its fur was black as midnight, eyes glowing faintly in the mist. It growled low, a sound that rumbled through the trees and seemed to vibrate through her bones. Liana's heart leapt, but she did not flee. Instead, she raised her knife, ready to defend herself. The wolf circled her slowly, its movements deliberate, intelligent. Liana could feel its awareness, its curiosity, even its hunger. She whispered to it, a strange habit she had developed over the years, speaking to the creatures of the forest in a language of tone and gesture rather than words. The wolf paused, tilted its head, then, with a frustrated growl, disappeared into the mist. Liana exhaled slowly, her body trembling. But before she could calm herself, a sound reached her ears. A human voice. It was deep, commanding, but full of concern, echoing through the trees. "Is someone there?" the voice called. Liana froze. Humans did not come here, not willingly. The last human she had seen had been her enemy, years ago, and the memory of that betrayal still stung. She crouched behind a large oak, blending into the shadows. "Please," the voice said again, gentler this time. "I mean no harm. Are you hurt?" Liana's instincts told her to run, to disappear deeper into the forest. But something in the voice, something familiar in its strength and sorrow, made her pause. She peeked through the branches and saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see into the very heart of the woods. There was an aura about him, a weight of authority and danger, but also a softness, as if he carried his own burdens. He stepped closer, carefully, as though he respected the forest as much as he respected her. Liana's pulse quickened. She had learned to survive by trusting no one, yet the sight of him stirred something she had not felt in years, a flicker of curiosity, of hope. "I heard you," he said, his voice carrying a note of sorrow. "Are you alone? Are you in pain?" Liana swallowed hard. Part of her wanted to shout, to warn him away, to remind him that humans were dangerous. But another part, the part that still remembered warmth, protection, and care, wanted to answer, to speak, to connect. I am alone," she whispered, her voice small but firm. The man nodded slowly, as if he understood more than she could explain. "I can help you," he said. "You do not need to face this forest by yourself." Liana's eyes narrowed. She had survived 15 years alone. No one had ever offered her help without seeking something in return. "Why would you care?" she asked, suspicion lacing her words. "Because," he said softly, "I know what it is to be hunted, to be feared, and to be alone. You do not deserve to live in shadows." There was a pause. Liana considered him carefully. His eyes were honest, and yet there was a weight in them that hinted at battles she could not see. He was not just a man, he was someone of power, someone who carried responsibility like a shield and a sword. Before she could respond further, a sudden howl pierced the night. It was not the wolf from before, but a pack. Larger, more threatening. The wind carried their scent. And Liana knew instinctively that these were no ordinary animals. They were drawn to her, to the life she had carved out in these woods. The man's stance shifted, protective, commanding. "Step behind me," he ordered. "Stay close." Liana obeyed, moving cautiously. Together, they faced the pack. The creatures advanced. But the man raised his hand, and a low, resonant sound escaped his lips, a sound that made the wolves hesitate, shiver, and finally retreat into the mist. Liana watched in awe, her heart pounding not from fear alone, but from a mix of admiration and confusion. This man was unlike any she had ever met. He had strength, yes, but also a sense of calm, a control that bordered on otherworldly. When the last shadow vanished, he turned to her. "You are safe. For now," he said. "But you cannot stay here alone. The forest is changing, and you are in danger." Liana's mind raced. She wanted to retreat, to return to the safety of her cabin, to the solitude she had known for 15 years. But something in his gaze, the understanding, the compassion, the unspoken recognition of her pain made her hesitate. She began, then stopped. Words felt heavy, fragile, like a bridge she was afraid to cross. He took a small step closer, careful, respectful, yet undeniable in presence. "I am Kalen," he said, "and I will not leave until I know you are safe." Liana's breath caught. Kalen. She had never imagined another human would find her here, and yet, here he was, watching her, seeing her, offering her a choice she had not dared to dream of for years. For the first time in 15 years, the forest felt smaller, the shadows less complete, and the night less lonely. But the danger of the pack, the unknown that lurked beyond the trees, and the mysterious power in Kalen's presence, left her heart pounding with both fear and anticipation. She had hidden for 15 years. And now, the Alpha King had heard her cry. What she did next would change everything. The forest seemed to hold its breath as Liana stepped cautiously toward Kalen. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to vanish into the shadows she had learned to call home. 15 years had taught her that humans brought danger, betrayal, and sorrow. Yet there was something about him, something in the calm authority of his stance, the depth of his gaze that made her hesitate. "I do not want trouble," she whispered, her voice small but steady. Kalen lowered his hand slowly, a gesture of trust. "You will not find trouble here from me," he said. "But danger is coming, and you cannot face it alone." Liana's heart pounded. Danger had been her companion for years, yet the idea of facing it with another human was both terrifying and oddly comforting. She studied him. The way the light from the moon caught the edges of his armor, the way his dark hair moved in the soft wind. His presence was commanding, yet he spoke with care. He was unlike anyone she had ever known. "You speak as if you know me," she said, suspicion lacing her tone. "I know more than you think," Kalen replied. "I know what it is to be hunted, to be alone, to carry burdens that no one else understands." Liana glanced at him, her green eyes wary but curious. There was a truth in his voice, a weight of experience that resonated with her own life. She had learned to survive, to fight, to hide, but she had never been understood. Perhaps he could understand her. Before she could respond, the forest shivered again. A rustling came from deeper among the trees. Liana stiffened, her hand brushing the hilt of her knife. She had faced wolves, shadows, and worse over the years, yet fear still found its way to her heart. "They are near," Kalen said quietly, his eyes scanning the darkness. "We must move. Quickly." Without waiting for her answer, he began walking toward a narrower path, leading deeper into the woods. Liana followed, hesitant, her senses alert to every sound. The trees seemed to close around them, the mist thickening, wrapping the forest in a soft, eerie blanket. Shadows danced as if alive, and Liana felt the weight of time pressing upon her. 15 years of solitude, 15 years of silence, 15 years of hiding, and now, a human had entered her world. As they moved, Kalen spoke in low tones, as if sharing a secret with the forest itself. "I have seen the path you have walked," he said. "I know the sorrow you carry, and I know the strength it has given you." Liana's pace faltered. No one had ever acknowledged her pain before. Her lips trembled slightly, and she turned her gaze to the ground, ashamed of the emotions rising within her. "You speak kindly," she said finally, "but kindness has brought me little in this world." Kalen's expression softened, a shadow of understanding in his dark eyes. "Kindness is not weakness," he said. "It is the courage to remain human when the world expects you to be less." Liana did not reply. Words felt fragile, heavy with meaning, and she had learned that silence could be stronger than speech. They walked on, the forest whispering around them, until they reached a small clearing. A stream ran through it, the water sparkling faintly in the moonlight. It was a place she knew well, where she had often rested during her long wanderings. "You could stay here," she said, her voice quieter now, more thoughtful. "This is where I am safe." Kalen shook his head. "Not safe enough. Something stirs in these woods, something older and darker than you imagine. I came for you because your life, your future, cannot be spent in hiding forever." Liana's chest tightened. The thought of leaving the forest, of returning to the world she had fled, was frightening. Yet the pull of his words, the certainty in his tone, made her wonder if life could be more than fear and solitude. Before she could respond, a sound shattered the fragile peace, a howl, distant but growing closer. Her muscles tensed. She had heard this sound before, long ago, when wolves roamed the forest near her cabin. But this was different. It was heavier, more urgent, and it carried a strange, chilling resonance that made her skin prickle. Kalen's eyes narrowed. "They are not ordinary wolves," he said. "Move behind me. Stay close. Move behind me." Liana obeyed instinctively, pressing herself against the back of his armor. She had fought alone countless times, but there was something primal about facing danger with another. Kalen's presence was solid, protective, almost magnetic. Her heart raced, not just from fear, but from something she could not name. The creatures emerged from the mist, shadows of black and gray with glowing eyes. Their growls shook the clearing, and their movements were precise, almost intelligent. Liana's knife felt small in her hand, insignificant against the power of these beasts. Kalen raised his hands. A low hum vibrating in the air around him. The creatures paused, tilting their heads as if hearing a command. Liana watched in awe as the alpha wolves hesitated, their aggression checked by the sound that seemed to resonate with the forest itself. "You have power," she whispered, disbelief and wonder in her voice. Kalen did not answer immediately. His focus was absolute, a mixture of calm and authority that made the wolves retreat, disappearing back into the darkness. Only then did he turn to her, eyes meeting hers with intensity. "You are safe," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "For now. But the forest is changing. You cannot hide here forever." Liana's mind raced. She had survived 15 years alone, yet the thought of facing the unknown beyond the forest, of trusting this man, filled her with equal parts fear and curiosity. She had built her life on solitude and caution, yet something in Kalen's presence stirred a longing she had buried long ago. She began, then stopped. Words felt fragile, incapable of carrying the weight of her years in hiding. Kalen stepped closer, careful not to overwhelm her, yet undeniable in presence. "I will not harm you," he said, "but you cannot face what is coming alone. Let me help you." Liana's gaze drifted to the stream, to the reflection of the moon in the water. For 15 years, the forest had been her refuge. Yet for the first time, she felt the possibility of something more, a life beyond fear, beyond shadows, beyond the isolation she had known. "I do not know if I can trust you," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Kalen smiled faintly, a mixture of understanding and patience. "Trust is not given lightly," he said. "It is earned, and I will give you the time you need." They spent the night in the clearing, sitting near the stream, the forest alive around them. Liana watched the moonlight dance on the water and felt a strange peace settle over her. She did not speak much, and neither did Kalen, yet the silence between them was comfortable, filled with an unspoken connection that grew stronger with every passing moment. By dawn, the forest seemed less threatening, less lonely. Liana realized that she had not felt a sense of hope in years. Kalen had awakened something within her, a spark of trust, a sense of belonging, and a glimmer of courage she thought she had lost forever. Yet even as the first rays of sunlight pierced the canopy, shadows lingered. Danger still waited beyond the trees, and the past she had fled for 15 years was not finished with her. Kalen had entered her world, bringing both promise and peril, and Liana knew that the choice she would make next could change everything. The journey from the forest to Kalen's kingdom was quiet yet tense. Liana walked beside him, each step a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The forest gradually thinned, giving way to rolling hills and the distant spires of a castle that gleamed faintly in the afternoon sun. It was magnificent, built from stone as old as memory, with walls that had witnessed centuries of kings, wars, and whispers of curses. Liana felt a mixture of awe and unease. The castle was vast, but it felt cold, distant, and full of invisible eyes. She had lived her life in solitude, relying only on the forest and her own strength. The idea of entering a place so full of people and of power was almost overwhelming. Kalen noticed her hesitation and fell into step beside her. "It is natural to be wary," he said. "The castle is a world of its own. But you are not a child, Liana. You are stronger than you know, and you will learn to walk within these walls without losing yourself." Liana's eyes met his. Strength, confidence, and something else she could not name. A quiet warmth that seemed to promise safety, yet also challenged her to rise above her fears. She wanted to believe him, but her heart and mind fought back. The gates opened, and the guards at the entrance bowed, their expressions respectful but cautious. Liana sensed their uncertainty immediately. She had never been treated with courtesy in her life. Fear and suspicion had always greeted her. Now, she felt their eyes on her, curious and calculating. She straightened her back, trying to appear composed, though every muscle in her body remained tense. Inside the castle, the halls were grand but cold. Tapestries of battles long past hung on the walls, and the scent of burning torches mingled with the faint perfume of flowers brought from distant lands. Nobles in rich attire moved gracefully through the corridors, their eyes glinting with interest, suspicion, or jealousy. Liana stayed close to Kalen, careful to follow his lead. "Do not speak unless you are spoken to," he whispered. "Watch and learn. The castle is full of masks." Masks. The word resonated with her. She had worn a mask in the forest, pretending to be indifferent to loneliness. But here, the masks were everywhere, hiding intentions and secrets. At first, the nobles seemed merely curious, whispering behind fans and hands. Liana noticed it all, the subtle glances, the raised eyebrows, the way some bowed too stiffly or lingered too long. She felt exposed, as though she were a creature of the wild, brought into a world that would study her carefully before allowing her to exist within it. Even Kalen's advisors, men and women who had served him for decades, looked at her with measured caution. "Do they always welcome strangers this way?" Liana asked, her voice low. "They welcome no one," Kalen replied. "Especially not someone who carries the past you do. You must move carefully, or they will see weakness where there is none." Liana nodded. She had survived threats far worse than whispers and scrutiny. Still, there was an unfamiliar tension, the kind that tightened her chest and made her heart race. She had entered a new kind of battlefield, where words and looks could wound as deeply as knives and claws. Days passed. Liana learned quickly. She observed. She listened. She measured every glance and tone. She found that the castle, despite its splendor, was a place of constant struggle. Alliances formed in silence, rivalries hidden behind smiles, and power that shifted with every word. Kalen guided her through this world, protective but not overbearing. He introduced her to a few trusted allies, each one careful to show respect while gauging her reaction. Liana noticed that he did not attempt to shield her from every slight or snide remark. Instead, he allowed her to face them, knowing she had the strength to endure and adapt. One evening, Liana found herself alone in a quiet courtyard, the moon casting silver light over the cobblestones. She leaned against a fountain, watching the water ripple. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the loneliness she had carried for 15 years, the grief of her past, and the strange, fragile hope that Kalen's presence had brought into her life. "You are thinking too much," Kalen's voice said softly behind her. She turned to see him stepping through the moonlight, his expression unreadable yet familiar. "I am learning," she replied, "about this place, about people, and about myself." Kalen approached slowly, careful to respect her space. "And what are you learning about yourself?" Liana hesitated. Could she speak of the fear that still lingered in her chest? Could she admit that the past haunted her? Even here, surrounded by splendor and power. I am learning that I am stronger than I believed," she said finally, her voice quiet but steady. "But the world is different from the forest, harder, more dangerous in ways I never imagined." Kalen nodded. "Strength alone is not enough here," he said. "You will need cunning, patience, and trust. Trust in yourself and in those who stand with you. But I will help you. You are not alone." For the first time, Liana allowed herself to hope. Kalen's words, his presence, and the gentle authority in his voice offered her something she had not felt since the day she fled her family's home. The possibility of belonging. But belonging came with its own dangers. One afternoon, as Liana wandered the hallways, a hand touched her shoulder unexpectedly. She spun around, knife at the ready, to see a nobleman she had never met. His eyes were sharp, calculating. "You are the girl from the woods," he said, his voice laced with curiosity and disdain. "The one who hides the past behind her eyes. Tell me, do you think the kingdom will accept someone like you?" Liana felt the familiar surge of anger and fear. For a moment, she wanted to strike, to run, to retreat into the shadows she knew. But Kalen stepped forward, placing himself between her and the man. "Enough," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "She is under my protection. Speak no more." The nobleman bowed stiffly, retreating with a forced smile. Liana's hands shook slightly, the tension of the moment leaving her body in small tremors. She looked at Kalen, gratitude and uncertainty mingling in her eyes. "You could have handled that," he said quietly, studying her. "I did not want to rely on anyone," she admitted. "I have spent years surviving alone." Kalen smiled faintly. "And you will survive here, too. But some battles are meant to be shared. You do not have to face every shadow alone." That night, Liana stood on a balcony overlooking the kingdom. The moonlight spilled across the city, illuminating rooftops and streets that had once been foreign and distant. She felt the stirrings of something new, confidence, curiosity, and an unspoken connection to Kalen that she could neither name nor fully understand. Yet the forest, her home for 15 years, still whispered in her mind. She thought of the cabin hidden among the trees, the sounds of birds at dawn, the stillness of the stream. She thought of the dangers she had survived alone and the lessons they had taught her. Could she truly leave it behind? Could she trust the castle, the people, and the man who had saved her? Before she could answer, a sound from the shadows startled her, a rustling, soft at first, then deliberate. Her heart skipped a beat. The danger she thought she had left behind in the forest had followed her here. Kalen appeared beside her in an instant, placing a hand on her shoulder. "They have found you," he said grimly. "The past does not let go easily, but neither do we." Liana's pulse quickened. The whispers of the past, the threats of the present, and the uncertainty of the future collided within her. She realized that she was no longer merely surviving, she was standing at the edge of a new life. One filled with peril, intrigue, and the possibility of something far greater than she had ever imagined. Liana had walked through shadows before, but never like this. The corridors of the castle seemed alive, with whispers and hidden eyes. Every step echoed the weight of centuries, of power, of secrets waiting to be uncovered. She felt the stirrings of a power she had not fully understood, something deep within her, tied to the bloodline she had thought lost forever. Kalen stayed close, his presence steady and grounding. He had been her protector, her guide, and slowly, in ways she did not fully comprehend, her anchor. But even he could not remove the fear that tightened her chest. The past was no longer distant. It had followed her, woven into shadows, murmuring threats, testing her courage. "Stay with me," Kalen whispered, sensing the tension in her steps. "No harm will touch you while I am here." Liana nodded. She wanted to believe him, and part of her already did. Yet trust was still a fragile thing, easily broken by the memory of betrayal that had defined her life for so long. She had survived alone for 15 years. Could she now survive with someone at her side? Someone powerful enough to stand against not just the present, but the shadows of her past. Their destination was a hidden chamber deep within the castle, a place that had belonged to her ancestors. Kalen had discovered it while searching for signs of the forces that had been stalking her. The air was thick with age and magic, and the walls were etched with symbols that pulsed faintly in the dim light. Liana ran her fingers over the carvings, recognizing shapes and sigils from her childhood, fragments of lessons taught by her mother before the tragedy. "This place, it is mine," she whispered. "Or it should have been." Kalen watched her quietly, his expression unreadable. "It is yours now," he said softly. "Whatever is coming, you do not face it alone." A low hum began in the chamber as Liana stepped closer to the center. The symbols on the walls glowed faintly, responding to her presence. Her pulse quickened. She felt power rising within her, a heat in her chest that spread outward, awakening something long dormant. "This is me," she murmured, awe and fear in her voice. "I never knew. I never felt it before." Kalen placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding yet encouraging. "You are more than you know. Your strength, your bloodline, your survival, they are all connected. The curse that haunted you also carries a gift. You are meant to use it." Liana's mind raced. All the years of hiding, of surviving, of fearing her own blood, had led to this moment. She could feel the past and future intertwining, shaping a destiny she had never imagined. But with power came responsibility and danger. The shadows she had fled were not finished with her. A sudden tremor shook the chamber. The walls seemed to pulse with an ancient energy, and from the darkness emerged figures cloaked in shadow. Their presence was malevolent, yet insubstantial, like smoke given form. The forces that had hunted her through the forest. The darkness she had feared all these years, they had found her. Kalen moved to stand in front of her, his stance protective. "Do not be afraid," he said firmly. "You have the power to face this. I will stand with you. Always." The shadows advanced, swirling and whispering, testing her resolve. Liana felt a warmth spread from her chest, a spark that grew into a steady flame. She raised her hands, instinct guiding her, and the sigils on the walls flared in response. The shadows recoiled, as though struck by invisible walls of light. "You are stronger than your fear," Kalen said, his voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos. "Believe in yourself." Liana's eyes blazed. She had spent 15 years hiding, surviving, doubting, fearing. But now, she stood tall, drawing on the strength that had been forged in solitude and honed by years of hardship. Her power flowed through her, not as a weapon, but as a shield, a declaration of her existence. The shadows shrieked and twisted, then dissolved into nothingness, leaving the chamber still and silent. For a moment, neither spoke. Liana's chest rose and fell rapidly, her hands trembling from the effort. Kalen reached out, taking her hand gently, steadying her. "You did it," he said, awe and pride in his voice. "You faced your past and your fear, and you conquered them." Liana looked at him, the fire in her chest slowly cooling to a steady warmth. "I could not have done it without you," she admitted. I never believed I could be more than what the shadows said I was." Kalen smiled softly. "You were always more. The forest, the years alone, they shaped you. Yes, but they did not define you. You define yourself now." There was a long silence, filled with unspoken understanding. 15 years of pain, survival, and solitude had led to this moment of clarity. Liana realized she no longer feared the shadows, not the forest, not the castle, not the darkness of her past. She had found strength, purpose, and something unexpected: trust in another human, trust in Kalen. Days passed, and Liana adapted to her new life. She explored the castle, not as a guest, but as someone reclaiming her rightful place. She studied the history etched into the walls, learned the politics of the court, and discovered allies among the servants and nobles who respected her courage and strength. She was no longer merely a survivor. She was a force, a presence that could not be ignored. Kalen watched her quietly, his admiration growing with each passing day. The bond between them deepened not through words or declarations, but through shared trials, silent understanding, and the unspoken promise that they would face whatever came together. Liana, once hidden and alone, began to trust the idea of companionship, of love, of partnership. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the castle in shades of gold and crimson, Kalen led Liana to the highest tower. From there, they could see the forest, the kingdom, and the distant hills where shadows once threatened her. The wind swept around them, carrying the scent of the earth and the promise of a new beginning. "You have changed," Kalen said softly. "Not just in power, but in spirit. You are no longer the girl who hid in the forest. You are something greater, something destined." Liana looked at him, her eyes reflecting both the sunset and the depth of her journey. "I never thought I could feel hope again," she admitted. "But you have given me a reason to believe in the world. And in myself." Kalen took her hand, holding it firmly. "And I will stand by you, always. Whatever comes next, we face it together." The castle, the forest, the shadows of the past, they were no longer threats, but reminders of the journey that had brought them here. Liana felt a sense of peace, of triumph, and of belonging she had never known. Yet, even as the night settled over the kingdom, Liana sensed the faintest stirrings in the distance, a whisper of danger, a hint that the world beyond the castle still held challenges. But this time, she was not afraid. She had Kalen by her side, her power awakened, and the courage to face whatever came. Together, they descended from the tower, ready to reclaim the kingdom and her destiny. The forest of her youth, the trials of survival, the shadows of fear, they were now part of her strength, woven into the woman she had become. As they entered the grand hall, the nobles and servants looked on, curiosity and respect mingling in their eyes. Liana no longer hid. She stepped forward, shoulders straight, eyes bright, carrying the quiet authority of someone who had faced the past and emerged stronger. Kalen walked beside her, a silent promise of partnership and protection. And in that moment, Liana understood the truth she had been avoiding for years, that love, trust, and courage were not weaknesses, but the most powerful forces of all.